Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 23 of the Broadview Podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk about yesterday's developments in the Derek Chauvin trial. So stay tuned.
And sometimes I gotta coach. And sometimes I gotta.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode, I think it's 22 of the Broadview Podcast. We're going to talk about, the Derek Chauvin trial. Kind of fitting about a year ago, almost a year ago. I don't remember, forgive me for not having the time frame right, but I had done probably about a year ago. I had done the almost fitting. I had a shirt literally this color on that podcast. I had done my Black Lives Matter podcast about George Floyd while the protesting and rioting was happening, and so it's almost, you can't plan stuff like this, but obviously yesterday was a big day. Whether it's important remains to be seen. Ultimately, Derek Chauvin was convicted of all three charges. I believe it's the second degree manslaughter. And I saw a lot of people saying that they didn't think that this is not justice, this is accountability, and it's fair, right? That's fair to believe. I think that sometimes, and I feel this way a ton with myself, when we're talking about things. I always bring up, like, when people, sometimes we set bars so low, right? Like we'll tell somebody, and I've experienced this, where someone will say, "Oh, you're a good father," and me, I try to stay really objective, and I'll be like, "Well, why am I a good father? Because I'm present, or I change my son's diaper, or something like that." Like, that is that the bar that we have set for things like that? And so, with what happened yesterday, celebrating doesn't feel right, because you wouldn't really celebrate something that belongs to you, right? If something is taken from you and returned to you, you wouldn't celebrate that. Celebrating this would be more like somehow George Floyd was brought back from the dead to be back with his family, and this is, I'm not here to litigate his life or whatever. I know a lot of people probably want to do that. I don't, well, not anyone who has common sense. More people on the other side want to do that. But the point is, and I shout out to Van Lathan. I'm not necessarily a fan of Van Lathan. Not that I'm a fan of him. I just think that sometimes he gets put into situations to speak on things that he's not necessarily, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like he's good at it. That has nothing to do with this. He said something real prescient. I think it was yesterday or this morning. I saw the clip essentially saying, a black life can't be the currency for change. Nancy Pelosi said, "Thank you for your sacrifice," to George Floyd, as if he was a soldier who opted to be a martyr for a movement. And that's not true either. Thanking them is almost, I don't even know you're better off not thanking them. For not thanking him or his memory, or thanking his family. You're better off not thanking them. It doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? And there was sometimes you can expect, and you can't expect, I guess, white people to understand that. Maybe not just white people, but generally people who have, and I don't know Nancy Pelosi to say she has good intentions or bad intentions. I have no idea. But you can't expect people generally who have good intentions to completely understand at times when they're not in the situation. I talk about that all the time, right? I mean, how many times have you heard me talk about that? Especially when it came to COVID, when I talked about the Black Lives Matter, the concept that we could go ahead and look at numbers to determine, it's one thing to look at numbers to determine whether something is good or bad. It's another thing to look at numbers to determine the moral currency of it, or the moral, to have a moral compass on whether something needs to be changed. And so much of what we do is based on these numbers, these percentages. Even when, if even when it comes to whataboutisms, right, where it's like, you have white people say, well, what about this percentage of white people that are killed by police? This number of white people, right? This specific number, and then we'll respond and say, yes, but the percentage of people of color that are killed are much higher than the percentage of white people. Listen, the thing is, even when that argument is presented, the truth of the matter is they all need to be eulogized, right? All of them need to be eulogized the same. I said this on the Black Lives Matter podcast. There is no percentage that is acceptable of police violence. I mean, think about how it's not even, you can't even call this bittersweet. This is just tragic, right? Because on the heels of this, we find out, and I can't remember her name, a girl was killed in Ohio by a cop. Now, she was charging somebody with a knife, supposedly, according to the video, and I didn't watch the video. I'm not going to. I've had enough of these videos. She's charging a girl with a knife, and the cops shoot her 4 or 5 times, right? Well, that can't be right. It just can't be the right way. That can't be the right way. I understand the concept, and I understand what the arguments is going to be, and I see all of the arguments already. And I haven't seen them physically. I mean, mentally, I already know. I get it. I've done all the mental gymnastics. I understand exactly what every single argument about this is going to be, and ultimately, I'm going to come back down to the same place. The same exact thing I said about Breonna Taylor. The exact same thing. There is no acceptable number of an innocent person being killed. Yeah, she's running with a knife. We don't know the details. We don't know all of that. Sure. She needs to be subdued. Well, isn't that what the tasers are for? Right? Isn't that what the tasers are for? Aren't cops? I mean, this is a 15-year-old girl. This is not to say that a 15-year-old girl can't be fucking, some thugged out badass who could beat the shit out of a grown man. All right? But I have to assume this is a 15-year-old girl. If she had hands like that, she wouldn't be charging at these other 2 girls with a knife. You're telling me that the cops couldn't subdue her in a way that made more sense without choking her to death or without killing her? That is confusing, right? And this is why I can't even say it's bittersweet, because bittersweet is left for things that are logistical, not lives taken, that this life has been restored, that as if these lives can be restored because this was done. No, there are still lives being taken. There are still cops that have gotten off free. Just because this is the most visible one doesn't make it, this doesn't wash away the sins of the past. And I had this conversation recently that, when we, because somebody had asked me, what do you think about, when you talk about, like, again, white people who have also died to police violence, right? Why do we think we don't bring that up the way we bring up the loss of Black lives? And I told them, well, I think it's twofold. One, there's the obvious percentage, right? The percentage of Black people killed and the percentage of white people killed are not the same. However, the other thing is because what this it doesn't just represent the loss of life from police violence. This represents something much deeper, right? This represents a systematic abuse of a group of people, right? This represents mass incarceration, police violence. This represents historical trauma done to people that, again, I keep pointing out when it comes to mental health, mental health is something I give a shit about. It's something I'm going to talk about more often, but, that mental trauma can be passed down to generations. So you're talking about a group of people who are dealing with a ton of trauma. I mean, people who have been routinely not forgotten about, because you see, that's what got Trump elected, right? Was that this group of people felt forgotten about. Meanwhile, this group of people, they're never forgotten about. Let's be clear. They're not forgotten about. And in fact, them and with immigrants, right? They're not forgotten about. These people are at the forefront of everything we do. And everything we do systematically is to make sure that these people cannot get out of these situations. And I talked somewhat about the history of policing, and there are great podcasts out there that you can listen to that will jump into the history of policing a lot deeper than I can, because I don't have all of the knowledge. But when you know the history of policing, you understand that exactly what happens here, that what happened to George Floyd and what happens to a lot of the people in these neighborhoods and these poor neighborhoods, which happen to be occupied mostly by people of color, is exactly what was meant to happen in the first place, right? I've talked about that before. It's exactly what was meant to happen in the first place. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. Keep them there and in control. Keep them controlled and subdued. You know what I mean? And if they step out of line, you kill them. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And so it's bittersweet, right? Ultimately, this is a small victory, right? I can't even say that this is right? Because right and wrong to me is that's a moral thing, right? That's what is right is morally right, and what is wrong is morally wrong. This is correct. This is correct. So this is more technical. This is a technical correctness. Yes, this person murdered this person, and all of the, and what kills me about the justice system generally, I mean, this fucking kills me, and I always bring this up, right? Because I use this example all the time. If you watch any of the docu-series or murder documentaries on Netflix, right, where they believe a man killed his wife specifically, and they'll find out that that man had been unfaithful to the wife, right? And they'll be like, well, there's your the wife may be found out, and there's your motive, right? Well, you're looking for more motive. So when you're trying to judge somebody, or you're in court and you're trying to whatever, we need motive. Well, what's the motive? Well, she found out he cheated on her, so he killed her. And not to say that that hasn't happened. I mean, there are cases where that is in fact the truth, right? But it's funny watching, just stepping away from the motive for a second, watching people's moral authority jump through the roof when they find out, oh, he was not loyal in the marriage to his woman, right? As if these people, I mean, people cheating on their wives and wives cheating on their husbands, like this is something that happens constantly, to be clear. I don't know what the numbers are, the percentages are. I just know that this shit runs rampant. It's not what people think it is. It's not like a once in a blue thing, or 1 out of every 100 relationships is like that. No. So watching people in this courtroom, right, that'll be like, oh my God, he cheated on his wife. While meanwhile, half of them probably cheated on his wife. It's like we go into a courtroom like this setting, and somehow the who we are as people changes to put on the lenses to act like we're all morally responsible people. You know what I mean? When in reality, it's all bullshit. So when you go into a court and we're arguing these things, like it kills me to watch lawyers, you know, like I understand the right to have a defense, right? So the right to have a defense attorney. I completely understand that. You know what I mean? And the idea of if there's reasonable doubt, you have to be acquitted. I can understand that, right? What I can't understand, and what kills me about all of these things, is based on the charges that were filed here against Derek Chauvin, right? If they would have instead, let's say, let's say instead they would have filed first degree murder charges, which means it's a premeditated murder, as opposed to the second degree murder charges, right? Now they have to go in there and prove that it's premeditated. And if they're unable to prove that it's premeditated, he goes home. He's innocent. He's home, right? Because you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So they can't just say, okay, well, let's charge him. Let's try for second degree now. No, it's either first degree, and if they prove it's innocent, that's the end of it. He goes home. Well, but he still murdered a man. How can that be fair? Right? How could that be fair? And obviously, that's not the case here. But the point being is, everything about this system sometimes, I don't know where the humanity in it is. If a life is lost, right, how can we begin litigating that person's life and like taking the moral high ground to decide whether he deserves, because that's what, a lot of media does. That's what a lot of the people, that's what Facebook does and all this, like to trying to argue this weird ass moral bullshit. I've watched people, right? I've watched people call into question George Floyd's drug abuse situation as some sort of way to make it okay that he's dead now. And meanwhile, these people were drug addicts. You know what I mean? These people have done drugs. So do you think you deserve to die because you did drugs at one time? And if somebody, so because that's always what I always wonder, right? So it's like, okay, so if a police officer kneels on your neck, because I think they said it's actually 9 minutes. I know we're running with, I think, what would you say, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but in reality it was 9 minutes. If a police officer kneels on your neck for 9 minutes and you died and you had drugs in your system, you're okay going out that way, then you must be fine. You must be dead and at heaven's gates telling St. Peter, it's all good, bro. I deserve to die because I have done drugs in my life, and that's it. It just logically doesn't make sense. But again, I mean, this comes with empathy, right? We lack empathy. I mean, I'm going to talk about that until I die. The lack of empathy in this country is fucking staggering. You know what I mean? To think a person could lose their life and we're immediately shitting on their whole livelihood as if people generally don't have complicated lives. Human beings are complicated. It's frustrating, and because everything gets so fucking politicized. I don't know how we got here. I don't know if it's always been this way. I hadn't been paying attention for a long time because I was dealing with my own shit. I don't know if it's always been this politicized. You know what I mean? But it's crazy to think that that thinking that George Floyd deserved justice could become some sort of leftist view, and thinking that Derek Chauvin should get off is some sort of right-wing view. I mean, that's lunacy. That is fucking lunacy. You know what I mean? The change that needs to be sparked for this to actually matter, and this is what I meant at the beginning when I said whether this is important or not is can't be judged today. It's going to be judged in 20 years. Today it's a breath of fresh air. Right? Actually, not even today. At that moment, it was a breath of fresh air until the next story hit. That was like, oh, great, another person was killed, or 2 people were killed a few days ago. So yeah, we can breathe one sigh of relief here, but as there are a million breaths in the day, we got to move on to the million other situations that also need this type of justice to be served. Breonna Taylor, those cops got off. Think about how crazy that is. And I'm going to continue talking about that. They were not even there for her. I mean, I guess they were technically there for her. But the point being is that they're not really there for her. They're there for the apartment. But the point being is to think that somebody else could shoot at a cop, and that cop could shoot back and kill an innocent bystander, and that person can get off. That's fucking lunacy. Just that basic tenet. Take away everything else. Take away everything else. Again, I'm going to keep going. My point is this. Yes, I completely understand. Listen, police see things that are very difficult to see without a question on a daily basis. Half of these police officers are taken from areas that they know nothing of. They're taken from areas, from suburban areas, from areas where they have single family homes, right? And put into areas where there are projects and are fucking culture shocked, out of fucking control. No human being can handle that. To be clear, to think that a police officer is going to handle that, they're not the best of us. We don't do enough work to make sure that they're the best of us. We as a country don't do enough work, to make sure that they're the best of us. And when we put them in these situations, we don't teach them to be the best of us. These people need sociology experience. They need psychology experience. They need to understand history. They need to understand how these neighborhoods got this way before they go in policing these neighborhoods. You're not going in here with an iron fist. That's what police do now. They come in with iron fists. And there are police that understand that policing a neighborhood means having a connection to the neighborhood. But there are police who don't believe that, who come in with a fucking iron fist, right? The idea that police are militarized, that's what that is. To think that people can protest, right, that we're supposed to be defending, we'll fight to the death for the Second Amendment, right? I mean, my God, what we'll do to avoid taking guns away from people is crazy. But then on top of that, right, when you look at shit like what happened with QAnon and 4chan, right, the fight we go through to protect our freedom of speech in certain situations, but then when people protest, it's completely fine with cops to just spray them the fuck up with tear gas and rubber bullets and whatever the fuck. Come on. And the thing is, we already know what it is. I mean, I'm not going to relitigate what happened at the Capitol. You know what I mean? We already know what it is. I mean, a million people came out and said if these were black people, they would have been killed. I'm not going to say that because I don't speak in hypotheticals, but generally I will say that we just saw this happen over here, that when it was for this reason, it didn't matter. But when it was for this made up bullshit reason, we didn't do nearly a fucking enough to protect that from happening, right? But go figure. Go figure, you know. And I don't want to come on here being negative because it is a win. And this man did get some justice. He didn't get justice. Let's be clear. He's dead. He lost his life. He lost his life. He didn't get it back. I guess the family will have an opportunity to sue the police department probably and win some money. And I'm sure that can assuage some of their stresses that they're dealing with. Sound like they're from a great neighborhood in Minnesota. Right? I'm sure that can help somewhat, but to think that they got justice, this person won't come back to life. You're not trading lives. We're saying, okay, well, you're going to go to jail now after being free for a year. And to be clear, and you know what? I've been up and down on this because there was a piece of me that felt like, well, yeah, of course they called him guilty. Listen, I argued with my friends on Sunday night that I didn't think they would. I thought he'd get off scot-free. Mostly because I don't have a lot of faith in people and in this country generally, unfortunately, and in this justice system. Again, that's not necessarily just in people, it's the justice system. You know what I mean? This skirting around, trying to find whatever backdoor way to subvert reasonable doubt so that people can be like, well, I guess I'm not sure that the drugs killed him. Or just watch it. Just watch it. Just watch it. Just watch the video. Do you think that this man, put it this way, did he help him stay alive? No. Well, then get him the fuck out of here. It's simple. I just can't even, sometimes I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like that situation to me specifically wasn't a ticky-tack situation. There's nothing to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's proved in the video. We see it. We see it. And now we got to get experts, and experts who are going to, because there are experts who argue for, like you have experts. Think about how crazy this is, right? So the prosecution has their own experts and the defense has their own experts. Well, depending where the money is, depends on who gets the better experts a lot of times. And on top of that, there are experts who work for the city, and these experts have a relationship with the police officers. So they're going to go up and speak, and at times they're not going to necessarily lie and perjure themselves, but yeah, they're going to speak in a way that defends their best interest, right? They're going to defend the police in their way. Well, is that justice? No, that's not justice. And because this person doesn't have enough money to go secure experts to really refute them with banging ass science and banging ass data, it won't matter. It won't matter. Well, that's not justice. That's not justice. You see, I guess, I didn't know what I was going to talk about here when I did this podcast. I wasn't sure the angle I was going to talk about, but I guess ultimately the change can't happen until things that need to be flipped on its head. I mean, the amount of things that need to be flipped will not spawn from this. I mean, I pray to God it will. I hope it does. That would be incredible. But do I think it will? No, I don't. I don't think it will. And there is a piece of me that was like, man, they had to make them. They had to convict them, because if not, cities would have burned. But then there's a piece of me that thinks, well, do I think that jurors felt that? So does that mean that jurors were perjured, or not perjured? I'm sorry, were influenced into convicting this officer because they were afraid that cities would burn if they let him off innocent? I don't know how to answer that question. I lean towards no. I don't think they were thinking that, but who knows? Who knows? You know what I mean? Who knows? When a person is trying to protect their best interest, what if one of those guys, one of those jurors, or a few of those jurors were business owners, and they're like, well, I don't want the same thing that happened last year to my business, guilty. You know what I mean? Well, that's not justice either, is it? So I don't know if that's the case. I mean, the truth is, yeah, I'm sure the country was on alert, and they needed to be. Fuck yeah, they needed to be on alert, because if he would have got off innocent, much deservedly, cities would have burned. Yeah. Yeah, cities would have burned. People would have lost things that maybe they did. When I say much deservedly, let me be clear. The microscopic portion of that, right? The individual portion doesn't deserve to lose things. You know what I mean? There are individuals who would have lost things that they didn't deserve to lose, right? No question about it. But cities need to be put on notice. This country needs to be put on notice that would not be acceptable any longer. You know what I mean? And this is going to be the case going forward, I'm sure. You know what I mean? It's going to be the case going forward. There's nothing ambiguous about this situation. There has been nothing ambiguous about the vast majority of these situations. There's nothing ambiguous about it. This needed to be done. You know what I mean? Is it justice? Yes, it is justice. Yeah, it's justice in the only way we can provide justice, because we can't bring that life back. And because hopefully, again, they'll get some settlement from the city, I'm sure. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that replaces his life. It doesn't, but it's something. And it's the only way we can provide justice, right? The way we understand justice in this world, this is the best that can be done to provide that justice. There really isn't anything else that can be done, unfortunately. You know what I mean? He can't be brought back to life. So yeah, I do think it's justice, and it's also accountability. I think being accountable is being just to people. If you work at a place and you're accountable to your boss and you're accountable to the people you work with, you're doing them justice, I believe. And that's how I believe in my heart. I believe that. You know what I mean? So I do think that this is justice, but I don't think it's enough. I think those are two different things. You know what I mean? So I think that's it. I mean, rest in peace to George Floyd. Um, you know, and the thing is, I haven't done any, to be clear, I haven't done any research on Derek Chauvin's personal life. I don't know if that dude was a racist or not. I know people, I think a year ago, they had mistaken him for a racist. I said that. I'm pretty sure I said that on my Black Lives Matter podcast. People had mistaken him for this racist guy that had a Confederate flag, and that wasn't him. And, it was all this fucking noise. So it's impossible to know this person's individual politics. But to be clear, what he did, that dude is, as much as he is a piece of shit, as much as he deserves to go to jail, he is also a victim of a system that believes that that should have been acceptable. Because to be clear, had what happened over the last year not happened, he does get off scot-free. It would have just been business as usual. It would have been business as usual. You know what I mean? It would have been business as usual. So, it's because of like all of these heroes who are out there protesting, like the people who are getting shitted on, who have been protesting for the last year, the people in Portland who have been getting arrested at a wild rate. You know what I mean? The shit that's been going around, the heroes that are out there screaming for justice, it's because of those heroes that this motherfucker got locked up. You know what I mean? Is that going to be enough? I don't know. Is this fight ever going to end? I mean, based on the last 400 years, no, I would think that this fight is never going to end. It's hard to say that the fight is ever going to end when there is no history of the fight ever ending, right? If you're looking at averages, the average is 0 for fight ending. So we'll see. Those are my thoughts. God bless everyone. Rest in peace to George Floyd. Black Lives Matter. You know the drill. Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor, which obviously I keep saying. I already know that's not going to happen. I think I just keep saying it because it means a little bit something more, right? It's a little bit more than Black Lives Matter. That's why the say her name thing was so prescient. You know what I mean? So, kill Breonna Taylor. Everybody else, stay safe, wear a mask, get vaccinated.
And sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta, cope. And sometimes I gotta, and sometimes I gotta.